I'm Callie Crossley, and I am delighted to be your official greeter for this weekend. So welcome, alum and guests. Welcome campaign co-chairs, Laura Malkin, Sue Wagner, Dorothy Jenkins. Welcome Sid Nafel trustees, and a big welcome to my fellow Alumni Achievement Award recipients. Woo! I'm excited that we've come together to celebrate the story that is Wellesley and the stories of Wellesley women whose experiences characterize the Wellesley Effect. In fact, the Wellesley Effect began for me before I even stepped foot on the campus as a freshman. Sometime right before I was set to arrive, Ebony Magazine did a big article about the number of Black students headed to certain campuses in greater numbers than ever before. There were photos of the Wellesley campus, which I'd only seen in pictures at that point, and of African American graduates. I was proud that this would soon be my community. So this weekend, we're telling the life stories that our experiences at Wellesley helped shape. The essence of what I do for a living is tell stories. As a broadcast reporter and now opinion journalist, I've spent my life finding the tales that inform and sometimes inspire. I strive to chronicle the voices that often go unheard, bringing a general audience into the worlds of people they will never meet. I know that what I learned here was foundational in building my career skills. In this challenging academic environment, I was asked to crystallize what I thought, to defend it with evidence. That's critical for a journalist. Here I learned to think about thinking. I learned that critical thinking was essential and that there were many perspectives on any issue. What's more, I learned that I could fundamentally disagree with someone who may have a point I need to consider. All that stood me in good stead as a commentator. I always say that Wellesley prepares young women to be leaders, to take charge and be in charge. And believe me, I've used all that training in every aspect of my television and radio career. Whether reporting the first in-depth examination of the HPV virus when I was at ABC News 2020, or now guiding conversations at WGBH with top experts about current events on the program Basic Black or on my own show, Under the Radar. I can't tell you how many times someone will approach me to applaud what I said or how I said it on our media criticism show, Beat the Press. Now, usually they tell me they appreciate my not being afraid to stand up for myself. Surprisingly, often these are women, not Wellesley women. Of course, it would never occur to me not to speak up. Wellesley is the place that helped me hone my voice. Wellesley is the place that set me on a path of speaking up and standing up for what I believe. That's the Wellesley Effect. When I was a producer on the documentary series Eyes on the Prize, America's Civil Rights Years, we undertook the critical task of identifying key eyewitnesses to the events of the civil rights movement. Some of the participants that we hoped to interview had died years earlier, so we had to turn to secondary sources, but to be historically accurate, we had to be certain that the people we decided to interview did have firsthand knowledge. The question our senior producer asked us to keep in mind: whose story is it to tell? Who is the person who is in the right place to tell what really happened and to know what it meant? I find the question to be useful when I'm seeking to get to the spirit, the heart, and the core of any experience. Whose story is it to tell? It's each of our stories to tell, and we proud Wellesley alumna must tell them loud and proud. What a triumph to represent a place where there is a chorus of voices who can tell the story. In considering what I would say today, I thought back to something I once heard from Scott Bedbury. He's the advertising brand master behind the rebranding of Starbucks and of Nike's Just Do It campaign. Scott Bedbury offers a simple strategy for success. A brand, he says, is a story that is always being told. We Wellesley alum who epitomize the Wellesley brand of intellect, transformation, and leadership must keep telling the story of the Wellesley Effect. and all this weekend we'll be doing that. We will hear the stories of alumni who have made a difference in however they have lived their lives. We begin right now with Robin Sparkman, who will kick off our afternoon and moderate our keynote panel, sharing our stories, alumni perspectives on the Wellesley Effect. Please join me in welcoming them.
Great. Thank you, Callie. Really appreciate that. And thank you, everyone on the panel. This is going to be a lot of fun. Before we start, I just wanted to speak on one half of my identity, which is my day job as the CEO of StoryCorps. And on behalf of everyone at StoryCorps, we are delighted to partner with Wellesley this weekend. I hope that you saw our mobile van around the corner. For those of you who don't know, StoryCorps, today actually is our 12-year-old birthday. And we're an oral history project. More than 100,000 people have participated in StoryCorps in what we call them interviews or conversations, and we have more than 60,000 conversations in our archive. All of those are also in the Library of Congress. Some of you may know StoryCorps from Morning Edition on Fridays when we broadcast excerpts of our stories. For those of you who don't know us, StoryCorps is all about the power of listening and sharing stories. We believe that if we all understand each other's story and try to understand where people are coming from, particularly people who don't look anything like you and maybe worship a different God from you, then maybe you'll have more empathy for that person. So I was really excited when I got the call from Wellesley reaching out to try to pair with StoryCorps for this weekend, and it makes perfect sense. And that's why I'm particularly excited to be here today and to moderate this panel and to hear the stories of my classmates to my left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my fellow panelists just to spend a minute or so giving you kind of introducing themselves, some highlights from their own bio, and then we'll kind of get into some various questions, and then at the end we'll let the audience ask your questions. Okay? So I'm going to start with Katherine. Great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katherine Collins from the class of 1990, Great Purple class. I studied economics and Japanese here at Wellesley, and so when I started my career in finance just a couple weeks after graduation, I can't blame my employers for thinking that maybe I actually knew something about finance, or accounting at least, but I studied feminist labor theory and 20th century Japanese fiction. So there was a little bit of a learning curve getting started, but it turned out this was actually the perfect preparation for a career in investing, where if you are curious and opinionated, you can actually go pretty far. So I love my time as an investor at Fidelity here in Boston. I was an analyst, a portfolio manager. I ran the research department, one of the largest in our field. And then I left in 2007, went to divinity school and earned my master's degree in theology, really wanting to fully integrate value and values in my professional life. I founded my current firm, Honeybee Capital, while I was at divinity school, and soon thereafter wrote my first book, maybe my only book, The Nature of Investing. And it's been a wonderful journey towards regenerative investing that not only does no harm, but actually helps to heal our societies and our planet. I also give up my time and invest that. Two of the more meaningful areas where I'm involved right now are as board chair of Last Mile Health, which is building community healthcare worker network in Liberia. And I'm also currently co-chair of the Wellesley Business Leadership Council. So I've had a lot of investing experience, obviously, but the reason I'm so delighted to be here on the panel today is far and away the best investment I have ever made is in Wellesley.
Great, thank you. Ophelia?
My name is Ophelia Dahl, and I came to Wellesley in a somewhat non-traditional way. I was a Davis Scholar, and I arrived here when I was 24, having come from a rather non-traditional family in many ways. I was born of very creative, wonderful parents who encouraged me to go out and see the world, so I actually spent about the first year after I had finished my high school in England, I spent in Haiti volunteering and getting to know that country a little bit. And after that, I found it quite impossible to go back to that same rural village in which I grew up, and had met some great friends in Haiti who I still work with, and together we all founded a nonprofit called Partners in Health, and we have grown that over the years. And right at the very beginning of the Partners in Health time is when I came to Wellesley. So I had this tremendous opportunity to have taken a gap year, essentially, then come to Wellesley, and then go back to something I found so meaningful. And I have stayed well connected to Wellesley because I live in Cambridge, and spend quite a bit of time here. I'm proud to be a trustee of this astoundingly great institution, and that way I can actually spend a bit more time. I'm also have found myself connected to other students who are here through their work and through our work in Rwanda, or indeed Liberia, and other places. It's a pleasure to be here.
Janice?
I'm Janet Hill, class of '69, and some of my '69 classmates are here. So thank you for being here, everyone. Let's see, I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, and I came to Wellesley in 1965. One of the things I told you is that I had never met anyone white until I got here. So yes, it was a shock. I got over it pretty fast. And of course, everybody in the class is my friend today, and was my friend then. Let's see, when I left Wellesley, I went to the University of Chicago to graduate school in mathematics, which is my undergraduate degree. And from there, I did some mathematical research for the Navy before working for President Carter in the Defense Department for 4 years, and then spending the next 30 years owning my own business. It was a management consulting firm that was involved in helping major corporations attract and retain women and minorities in senior positions. So I did that until 2010, and the business was extremely successful, but I got a little tired, and I have grandchildren to indoctrinate, and they live in Florida, and I live in the Washington, D.C. area, so I have to go there to indoctrinate them and teach them to terrorize their parents. And so I needed time for that. And so I did retire and sold my business in 2010. During that period of time, and still today, I served on 10 corporate boards. Today I'm on 4 corporate boards. I'm on the board of Wendy's Hamburgers, which I'm sure all of you eat, and not that one where the clown, no, not that place. You don't go there, but you do go to Wendy's. I'm on the board of Dean Foods. We're in the dairy business, and I'm sure everyone in this room drinks milk, whole milk. I am also on the board of the Carlyle Group, which is the largest private equity firm in the United States. That's located in Washington, D.C. And I'm on a Steve Case private company called Echo 360, which is a software that's sold to colleges and universities. I also serve on 6 nonprofit boards today, and I have served on maybe 25 over the last 40 years. I'm on the board of trustees at Duke University, where my son went to school. I am on the Kennedy Center board, the Wolf Trap board, a performing arts center also in Washington. I'm on the Wolf Trap board, which is, again, as I said, a performing arts center. I'm on the Military Bowl, which is a football bowl game played 3 days after Christmas at the Naval Academy. I'm on the Underground Railroad Freedom Center, which is in Cincinnati, and it is what it is described. And I'm on the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics, which is trying to keep student and student athlete in college and college sports. So we do a lot of original research on that. I've been married 45 years to the same man, who, when I married him, and some of his friends are in the room, so I don't know whether I should say this, because they'll be calling him in a second. But he refers to himself as a recovering sexist. He says, because he went to Yale before there were women at Yale, he went to an all-male high school in New York City, a prep school, and then he played football in the NFL, and then he worked for Major League Baseball. But he says he's a recovering sexist, and he says you take it one day at a time. He is in his 45th year in recovery. You can call him and tell him I said that. I have one son, and my husband, my son, both professional athletes. My son is now retired from 20 years in the NBA. My daughter-in-law is a rhythm and blues singer, so I'm much more hip-hop than I look. I want to be.
I'm not sure why you looked at Satya when you said that. Yeah, there's the hat.
And that's about the whole story of my life.
I'm so sorry. Right. I'm so sorry your husband isn't here for rebuttal. Yeah. Okay. Rocio.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Rocio Ortega, and I think it's very interesting that we're sitting next to each other because I will graduate in spring 2016. So I'm an actual senior here, and I actually have class after this. So I managed to squeeze this in my agenda. But I'm double majoring in political science and Latin American studies. I'm originally from East Los Angeles, California. Both of my parents are from Mexico, so I'm first generation Mexican American, first generation college, everything first generation, I guess. Thank you. So aside from college, I am heavily involved with a campaign of the United Nations Foundation called Girl Up, and their mission is to educate girls in Liberia and Guatemala and Ethiopia and other countries. And it was through there that I really was able to find my voice. And I started prior to coming to Wellesley, and then now that I've been here at Wellesley for almost 4 years, I've continued to develop that voice and get some of my peers involved and just spread the word. So my story is still being written right now, but I'm very happy to be here with you all today. And really, if there's one thing that I love about Wellesley so far is just this mission of being able to connect, alums or young alums or current students to continue developing that story and just really looking out for each other.
Great. Okay, great. The lady with the hat.
I'm Satya Twena. I graduated in the class of 2005. I live in New York City, where I own one of the last hat factories in America. I started making hats in 2005 after my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer and lost her hair due to cancer treatment, and started making hats for her as a way to cover her head and interact in society in an appropriate way. Whatever that means. And so, yeah, I started making hats for my mom, and one of my friends in New York City introduced me to a hat factory who had manufactured my hats for about 2 years, and I was that pesky Wellesley woman who would run up to the factory and try seeing how everything's made, and to the owner's chagrin, I would come in every single day and just get one step further. And eventually, to the point where I was practically there hours at a time watching and interacting with the employees. So when the factory had closed in 2003, I was one of the first people to get a phone call from one of the employees letting me know that the factory had been closed overnight and they were looking for jobs. And so I took over the factory with a lot of help actually from a lot of Wellesley support, some Wellesley graduate support. Some of them are here today. And so I run a hat factory in New York City, 5,000 square feet. We run everything the traditional method of millinery, which is using machinery and equipment from the 1900s, and quite an attraction in New York City right now. So that's what I do.
Great. Pretty great panel, right? Exactly, yeah. Okay, so I want to ask the panelists a little bit more about their background and kind of how they got to Wellesley, and then we can talk about things that are a little more current. And I want to start with Janet. You want to tell the story about how you got to Wellesley?
My mother read an article about the Seven Sisters in 1964. It was in Time magazine. Again, we were living in New Orleans. I'm an only child. We were in a segregated environment. And she wanted to get me out of Louisiana and get me out of New Orleans. So she made the decision that I would come to Wellesley. I applied, I got in, she put me on a plane, bye-bye, and I came here by myself. That was probably the hardest part, to do that, because I was terribly spoiled by my father. And so when I got here, I was not especially comfortable right away. First of all, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to compete with the women here because they seemed very self-confident, and I don't think I was as self-confident at the time. Later, I found out that some of them weren't as confident as they appeared to be, and that confidence grew over, of course, 4 years. But within those first 3 days, I was a little shaky, so I called home. And I had a plan that my father would answer the phone, and I would say, I want to come home, and he would say, I'm coming to get you, and you can go to Tulane. And I had this plan, which fortunately did not work because my father did not answer the phone. My mother answered the phone, and I must tell you what she said. She said, you're not coming home. You're not running away from school. When you get in academic trouble, and it happened about a minute after she said it, go to the dean and ask the dean for help because Wellesley has admitted you, and it's now their responsibility to help you graduate. And then she said, don't tell me that you know, everybody's white because you knew that before you got there, number one. She said, but you're going to extend the benefit of the doubt to the young women there. And she didn't know any of them, but extend the benefit of the doubt to them and not assume they're bad like politicians in Louisiana. And that message has stuck with me for the rest of my life. I always extend the benefit of the doubt to anybody that I meet.
Okay, great. Ophelia, you touched on it a little bit, but do you want to talk about how you made your way to Wellesley as a Davis Scholar?
Well, circuitously is the answer. It was, my mother was American, my father was English, so I had spent most of my childhood in England. And then after spending time in Haiti, I decided that I would move to the United States and spend time here with some of the people that I had met early on after the work in Haiti. And when I did that, quite quickly, a friend of my mother's, who's a Wellesley alum herself, and Paul both suggested that I go to school here. And because I was 24 at the time, I had already tried in England to change my mind essentially about what I wanted to do. I had done some arts in the UK, and then I decided I wanted to go to medical school. When I tried to apply to medical schools and do the work that was necessary to do that, there was a resounding chorus of negativity that because in the UK at least you used to have to kind of really choose quite early on the course you wanted to take. I had not chosen the course that would lead me to medical school. So I had knocked on a few doors in the UK and really found none of them were in any way opened even a crack. And so when I came to the United States and somebody said, you should go and apply to Wellesley that has a Davis Scholar program, and I remember that. I can remember my first interview here in which I just kept thinking about how optimistic and welcoming and invitational this place was. And every single thing I suggested, nobody wrinkled their forehead. Nobody looked perplexed at all. They said, absolutely, you can do that. Of course you can do that. And that was the message that I heard very early on here, which was a great contrast to the wonderful education I got in England, but entirely different, the optimism and invitation that I received here.
Okay, great. Satya, do you want to tell your story about how you made your way to Wellesley?
It's kind of a little complicated, but I will weave it in a way. So I grew up in Southern California. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention my mom is still alive and with us, and such the inspiration behind what I do. Big detail. So I grew up in Southern California, was a super athlete, meaning that I played on the Olympic development team when I was 12, and they were preparing me to be a soccer star. And so I had actually went to Mills College where my mom, I got a tour of Mills College where my mom went to college, and thought, I am not going to women's college. And this was right before she dropped me off to Stanford camp, where I was doing my, I think it was my junior summer soccer program, and it was really like more of a meet and greet, making sure that I got along with the current Stanford students and soccer players. And at the time, I hated Stanford. It was way too big. The women weren't very nice. The women on the current team wasn't very inviting or encouraging of a new player. And I remember feeling very discouraged by that. And to my luck, the current Stanford coach at the time was the ex-Wellesley soccer coach. And the current Wellesley soccer coach happened to be there because she, too, was looking for exceptional academic students. And so I, after 3 weeks, was like, I am not a Stanford material. This is not the school for me. And she, I guess, sensed that, and her name was Liz. And Liz literally came running up to me and said, I have this school for you. You are gonna come and you're gonna fall in love. And I said, you see, for me, I come from a long line of badass women, and I need to be supported by women. I need to understand, like I didn't understand this community, the soccer team, because all of the previous experiences I had had on previous soccer teams had been of encouragement, of we are going to support each other to create our goals, to create our dreams, to create our vision. And to not get that was very demoralizing. And so she said, please come to Wellesley, please come check it out. So my dad, of course, how life and destiny has it, I'd never been to Boston before. And he told me that he all of a sudden had a business trip that he had to go on in Boston, and would I like to join him? And my mother, who I'd come home and told all about the Wellesley soccer coach and how I wasn't sure if I was interested in all-women's college experience, she said, I'm going with you, we are checking the school out. And actually, on my way over to Wellesley this afternoon, I was on the phone with my mother, and she said, you remember how we thought the train station was really close to campus? And free Uber days where we actually walked, I think it's the mile to campus. And I had that same feeling driving up today, where I just felt so grateful and so excited by the potential of what exists here. And just between, I mean, I grew up in Southern California where there's, you know, great modern architecture, but I'd never experienced this fairy tale, you know, brick building architecture with a lake. I mean, it just felt felt very storybook. And so I walked, the minute I stepped foot on campus, I turned to my mother and I said, this is where I want to go. And at that time, my grades were good, but I knew that Wellesley students were great. And so I had no idea how I would get in because I knew Wellesley. My aunt actually told me that her biggest regret in life was not being accepted to Wellesley. And so knowing this, I was like, you know, my aunt's pretty amazing. I had applied early decision, prayed, had a, one thing that I love and credit Wellesley with is the interviews that, you know, that we interview potential students to come here. And it's not just about grades. It's not just about being an exceptional musician or talented person. It's about being a well-rounded woman. And so I had my interview, and I showed up like myself and dazzled them with my spectacular, I don't know what I had at that time, I was actually pretty shy, but they saw something in me, and that, whatever they saw, has taken me from where I was then to everything that I've done to this point. And so I'm just so grateful that I've had the opportunity, education, and history of being a student at this college.
So that was not a paid professional endorsement of Wellesley at all, right? Completely unscripted. I know.
I am
so funny.
like
right.
I should be the mascot for Wellesley because I tell my husband, when we have children, if there are daughters, they have no choice. It is Wellesley or nothing.
Right. Okay. So Rocio, what was the biggest surprise when you got here? As you mentioned before, your parents did not able to graduate from high school or college, and so I'm curious. And you're one of how many kids? 5. Yeah. So tell us, what was the biggest surprise when you came to campus 4 years ago?
Yeah, so I'm also from Southern California, and I had never experienced, I guess, like a New England setting where you have the brick buildings and everything. There were a lot of shockers when I got here. First of all, I did know that I was going to be a minority student, but I didn't realize it was going to take such a toll on me right away, immediately. I did feel that level of discomfort in the beginning, and it did take some while for me to get adjusted my first year. But the one thing that really surprised me, that helped me out in all of these things, was the community that was available to me, because even though there were people from different backgrounds from me, they were willing to learn from me. And if they didn't know how to approach me, they'd say that very bluntly, and I'll be like, okay, you know, like, let's talk about it, let's get to know each other. But then I knew that I wanted that home away from home, and I found that with the Mezcla community here, which is a Latina organization on campus, and they really just helped me foster, you know, that community that's here, and say that it's okay if you have different backgrounds, you know, in a classroom setting, because I wasn't used to being the only brown person in a classroom. But instead of that stopping me, if anything, it encouraged me to kind of speak up, and it's something that I kind of noticed throughout my years here at Wellesley that I've been working on. And then another shocking factor is just when you step outside of Wellesley, how different it is, and how I guess that you're always looking for that nurturing environment, and it's not always there. So in that sense, I'm very happy that Wellesley has provided me with that here.
Great. Catherine, you grew up in small town Pennsylvania?
I did.
Yeah? Do you want to tell us what was it like, the transition to come here?
Sure. So I grew up in rural Pennsylvania and had really no conception of Wellesley before I got here. What really struck me when I arrived was well, two things. One, Boston really is much farther away than it looks on the map. So that was a little reorientation. The second thing, though, was a little more powerful, and it was this sense of very high expectation right off the bat. People kept calling us women. They kept talking about this great legacy. I was 17 years old. I brought stuffed animals to college. Like, I was not really prepared to be a woman who was going to change the world quite yet. So it was very daunting to me to get started, and really all through my first year, I did not feel that this was my community just yet. But I worked with food service, and I was working at Reunion that year, and all of a sudden, Sunday morning, the woman I was working with said, the parade's starting, you have to go up. And I was like, yeah, I'll see it. She said, no, put down your tray, you have to leave, go and see it. Okay. So I ran upstairs, and it was the start of the parade, as you all know, and there was, you know, this sea of white and these cars coming through with women in their 90s, and I just burst into tears. I suddenly understood what everyone was talking about, and from there on, it was smooth sailing.
As you know, Wellesley is all women, or older girls, shall we say. So, Satya, let me address this to you. You know, was the all-female student body, was that a selling point, or was that a drawback for you?
You know, I think in theory, I thought it was going to be a drawback, that I would have no social life, and I had gone to a very small private school. I call it private school, but it's really a Jewish day school in California, where you know, there was like 6 students sometimes in my class, and for me, going to, again, another small place where there were only females seemed like it would be limiting. But in the end, the minute I stepped on campus, and the first time that I actually came to Wellesley, where I had my interview, I stayed in the dorms with somebody that I kind of knew, and I realized that that sisterhood, the thing that I admired so much when the women in my family, was so alive and kicking here. So the minute I stepped on campus, it was a no-brainer that the all-women's thing would be the most beneficial thing that I would ever do.
Mm-hmm. And I want to ask Janet your opinion on this. We talked when I talked on the phone before this today, we talked about how your life is surrounded by a lot of men. And you're not just the mother of a son, but you're deeply involved in the professional athletics. And so I'm wondering what you think about Wellesley being all-female as a strength or a weakness.
Oh, I think it's definitely a strength. There's no question about that. For myself, I would say I really grew up here. There's no question about that. You know, it's superior in terms of its educational opportunities. The network of Wellesley alum is without question one of the strongest ones. My husband claims to know all living Wellesley alum because he thinks he's met them all. He hasn't, but that's how many have come through our lives, if you will, over the last 45 years. And so the school is better today than when I was here, but I get the benefit of that, if you will. So I get the benefit of all of you who are younger than I am, and the excellence that you have brought to this institution. So I still think it's a great strength. Now, I'm an affirmative person. I think I told you that on the phone. And so it's a bit of a conundrum inside of Janet's head to be in favor of any single-sex situation. I wouldn't be in favor of it at Yale, my husband's alma mater. And by the way, he went to Yale before she had women at Yale. So I have a problem, as it were, saying to him that, of course, they should be integrated with men and women, and we should not. I would not have a problem if we admitted men, and I know I'm out of sync with many in the room, but, you know, I mean, we're going to compete with men in the wide, wide world when we get out of here, and we can do it here, too. But I'm fully behind where we are right now. So either way, I'm good.
Great. Okay. Great. Okay.
I'm not going to start a revolution. Karen.
Okay. Ophelia, let's talk about what your takeaways are in terms of what are the 2 or 3 things you can point to, the most important things you learned when you were at Wellesley.
Well, you know, it was such a rich experience for me. I think that one of the things that I've realized that I didn't know at the time was just how much this school influences you for the long term. That there's in many ways, it's a little bit like taking a time release kind of capsule, that once you're here, all of these different things that influence you as you're here, some of them don't get realized for 5 years, a decade, 20 years, or when you become a parent, and yet you can trace this back to your time here. And I have found that over and over again in a career that is focused on global health. I didn't go to medical school. I was so taken by the opportunities I had in the English department, and I realized that doing and focusing on one specific area absolutely would open up other areas to me. So rather than in any way narrowing my focus, I actually chose to focus on global health because I could do English literature. So in going back and thinking about all of the different ways in which the things that have stuck with me, they include, I was thinking about this the other day. I can remember absolute conversations from many of the classes that I took, particularly the survey classes, but long conversations, not because I have a good memory, but because the teaching and the other students were so exceptional. That's why I remember those things and don't remember many things from 3 or 4 years ago. Those things have stuck with me, and the way that you can connect. I went back recently before talking to you and had a look at some of the papers that I had written and realized that I had connected to, in political science, for example, the politics of development and underdevelopment, the literature of empire, poetry and politics, all of these ways that I can think about that weave back this liberal arts education to the very specific things that I chose to concentrate my life and career doing.
Katherine?
Well, gosh, it's hard to narrow down to 1 or 2 things. So many memories from my own classes were just flashing through my head as you were saying that. But one of the most vivid memories I have here was in one of my first economics classes, and I argued with Marshall Goldman, which still surprises me a little bit to this day. So I'm surprised I argued with him, but he listened. He actually wanted to hear what I had to say, and we had a grown-up discussion about minimum wage, and this was just a huge breakthrough for me. So when I step back and I think of all the moments like that I had here, I would say I learned to know my own mind here, and I learned to speak my own mind.
Rocio, what do you think you're going to take away when you graduate in a few months? What do you, just try to look back the last few years. What are a couple things?
Definitely check back in with me this time next year. A lot of things to take away from my years here. And really it's anything from the personal aspects of like, how many people around me do I have that will support me and how many people can I support back? That's something that I definitely want to take away once I leave this campus. And then in terms of the professional aspect, what impact can I really make outside of this campus? And just bringing it back to how many people really share the same goals or the same passions that I have, and how can I work with them? And if I encounter people that for some reason are not as passionate about some of the issues I am, how can I be that persuasive person? How can I be that person that, sells these ideas or, just tries to spread a good message? So I think it'll be an interesting time this time next year, how I see the world outside of Wellesley College, just because my time here has been very positive for the most part in terms of me being supported by faculty and by students here. But again, I'm a little bit scared about what's going to happen, after graduation, which is, I think, just a general feeling overall. So definitely do check back in with me.
We're not scared for you. Don't worry, okay? We're excited for you. Don't worry, really. Yeah, please.
Can I have one quick thing? I was also struck when I looked at those papers, and I think this is a specific example of how many times I actually got papers back that said, actually, with a bit of tweaking, this could be better. This is not your best work. I was thrilled when I finally got a paper that said from a fantastic professor, finally your intelligence committed itself to paper. To have that level of expectation here, and I wouldn't have said I had sailed along, but I don't remember that kind of rigor, and that stays with you always. Before I hand anything in, before I present anything, I think about, could this be a little bit better? Those are very specific examples that have stayed with me.
How has it affected you as a boss?
High standards, I think. I have no doubt that, as I knew with myself, that a lot of the time I could have done a better job, and there may have been all kinds of circumstances that might have prevented me from getting my best work out at that moment, but I knew I was capable of something better, and as a result, I think that one of the things that I have tried to do with the stakeholders that we have at Partners in Health, who are our patients, is to say, everything you do is in service to them. It better be as absolutely good as it can be. So I think that it translated, I hope I have some forgiving qualities too, but I would say I'm fairly exacting.
I'm sure that everyone in this room would cop to that in some way or another as Wellesley alums. Yeah. Okay, so Janet, I want to ask you about how your Wellesley education has affected sort of the rest of your life. You came here, you were one of a handful of minorities on campus. You were a Southerner in New England. And what I think is interesting from our conversation is that you were one of the few math majors on campus back then. So do you want to talk about the impact looking back?
I think there were 6 math majors in my class, and we were a strong, and still are, a strong cabal. Well, first of all, you want to know about how the study of mathematics or studying here at Wellesley?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Being a math major at Wellesley back then, how has it affected you over the last
Well, the
few
biggest
decades?
thing that happened is in 1969, 1/3 of our class majored in art history. I did not take art history while I was here, so at graduation I realized I'd made a mistake. However, I made a mistake not taking the class. Taking mathematics or majoring in mathematics has served me for the rest of my life. And by the way, I failed to convince my son, who triumphantly said to me in his junior year at Duke that he was going to get out of Duke without taking mathematics. And I'm like, why? And what kind of a school is this that would allow you to do this? On the other hand, he majored in history as his dad did, and he says today that the amount of history I know could fit in a thimble, and it's probably a slight bit less than that. Again, I think a liberal arts education at a school like Wellesley will serve you for the rest of your life. I mean, in terms of mathematics, I think I use my mathematics training every day. I'm not doing calculus problems at home. That's not the point. But the way I go about getting things done in a given day and a given week, I have a lot of things on my plate that I voluntarily bring onto my plate. I admire the kind of work that you've done, but I look at my own life and I'm happy about the fact that I've probably served on 25 nonprofit boards. So this idea, which also started here, of service to society, which is really embedded in our motto, is something that instinctively, without saying I am going to serve society, I feel like I've done. And I would encourage others to do it who are younger, because you have a lot of intellectual and practical resources to share with other people, even current students do. So it turns out it isn't as if someone said, go forth and do this. Sure. But we did that. All of us did that. So.
Okay. So Satya, you're an entrepreneur. You know, this is a liberal arts college. How did your experience here affect your career as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. My parents also just put me on a plane and said, go, you know, find a cell phone, find some linens, like you'll find things, right? And so I realized my experience, it was like, first step was independence, right? And for me as an entrepreneur, independence and being able to know that I am reliable and I can not only, you know, being an entrepreneur is up and down, and I can fall and get up, which is something that I learned at Wellesley. My second semester at Wellesley, freshman year, I applied or TE'd for society, and I didn't get in. And I had maybe like 10 really close friends, and they all got in except me. And devastated, right? But then the next semester, I TE'd again. And I realized it showed me, and at that time I didn't know, but of course, you know, hindsight's 50-50, and I realized that I learned perseverance, which is one of my favorite qualities about myself and being an entrepreneur, is perseverance is everything. You will fail, you will get up. You will fail, you will get up. You'll try new things. And that was something that I find very important to the person I have become is, it doesn't matter if I fail, I get up. And I was shown that at Wellesley. And so independence, perseverance, and then leadership. I not only got into that society, I then became president of the society and ran the society. And all of those things, they're laughable and funny, but now it's such an indicator of who I am. And I think that women come to Wellesley knowing that deep down that's who we are. And we're like these beautiful silver bowls that Wellesley just polishes, that they just continue, you know, with, and it's not just the amazing professors or faculty that we have here, it's with each other, right? I think the community and the sisterhood, we show each other different facets of ourselves, and we polish each other and we support each other. And so I think that, again, that Wellesley shows us who we are and pushes us to be even better than what we came.
Okay, great. So Katherine, do you want to talk about Wellesley's influence both at Fidelity and as an entrepreneur now? And then I think what is so interesting is your path to divinity school.
Oh, sure. Well, I don't know how many of you share this, but I feel like Wellesley is sort of the root of everything that has followed for me. I think that the common theme that has woven through all these quirky twists and turns that I've taken is my own curiosity and knowing that it's okay to be curious and you can kind of follow your curiosity. And that goes hand in hand with knowing there is a community of people that kind of believe in you, regardless of the context, regardless of your resume, like they actually believe in you as a person. And that's been such a precious thing. I can tie a lot of specific academic things I learned here to various projects I worked on, but I think the real core is much, much deeper than that. And what has been most surprising and most wonderful is that sense of confidence and people kind of having your back. It's even stronger when things aren't going so well. And so when you are in one of those betwixt and between situations that really call for courage and support, and the way forward is not so clear, and you don't really feel like telling your story in front of a couple hundred people because it's not so great at that moment, that's when it's been most powerful. So I'm really grateful.
I want to ask you all a little bit about sisterhood. I mean, to me, as an alum who's about to have her 25th reunion, I talked to a Wellesley classmate either by email or phone at least once a week. I mean, in the last 24 hours, I had dinner with one Wellesley alum, and then I texted this morning with another one who's got a job offer, not sure she's going to take it. You know, and that's not atypical. And I have other things going on in my life, you know, aside from that too. So I just love to get a sense from you, from anybody who wants to jump in here, in terms of your Wellesley classmates. What role do they still play in your life today? Great. Jenna? Yeah.
Well, we just had our 45th reunion, so I got very involved in that, if you will. And it was great to see maybe half the class back at reunion. So I think that, I don't want to say that we've talked every week, if you will, but I do speak to probably a Wellesley person 2 or 3 times a month, but they're not necessarily my class. In fact, usually they are younger than I am, and I've met them in the course of my work, or I already knew them, and or in this powerful 4,000 or 5,000 women who are in the Washington, D.C. area. So they're all over the place there.
Great. Anybody else? Satya?
Yeah, so when I came for my interview, I met Chip Case, and he said to me, he's like, the women that you're in class with and the women that you're interacting with will be the women who stick by you for the rest of your life. And he said they will be the women standing by you at your wedding, and it's been true. I got married a year or two after college, and of course, all of my women, my bridesmaids, were all Wellesley classmates. And then I got off the phone just before this panel with Wellesley College and a friend of mine from Wellesley. And I've remained very close to a lot of the girls I was in school with. And I got a phone call like 2 weeks ago from a Wellesley student who's thinking about, or a Wellesley graduate who's thinking about being an entrepreneur. And it's this constant ebb and flow. And I'm so excited anytime I get the opportunity for a Wellesley student to ask me any sort of advice. I mean, in general, it's exciting when anybody asks me for advice, but particularly a Wellesley student, I get very excited by the opportunity of mentoring, because I knew that was one of the things that I wanted to, that I had hoped for from going to such a great school with such an amazing legacy, was our alumni network being so robust.
Okay. Ophelia?
I think also being a Davis Scholar, I have stayed in touch with many of the people that I met here, but I also was able to make a number of friends with traditional age students. And I think that has continued on now, and that I seek out and spend some time with traditional age students now. And I think that the sisterhood is obviously not only for your own class, but really, as Janet was saying, it's throughout Wellesley over many decades. And I feel I was able to go for a walk with a student from first year here who's from Burundi, who came here this year. And as we were walking around the lake yesterday afternoon, I was thinking about how much I was learning from her. And I was actually asking her a number of questions about her experience here, but the experience that she brought from Central Africa to here, to Wellesley, and then will take back to Africa at some point. There's some immensely important poetry to that journey.
I think it's Madeline Albright who said that there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. You know, what I have found is, just because I've had such great friends from Wellesley, and also just grew up, I have 2 daughters, I have a sister, a lot of women in my family that I'm very close to, is that I'm sort of predisposed to feel connected to women in the workplace. And I'm just wondering, for the rest of you, how has your Wellesley experience affected your feelings about trying to help other women in the workplace or making connections with them? Katherine? Yeah.
Well, I have to say I was pretty surprised to find that sisterhood is not yet universal in the world. So it took me aback on several occasions to find that some of the women I knew were not quite as supportive as I just described. And so at first it really kind of threw me back a little bit, and then I just thought, oh, you poor thing, you don't know. You know, how great this can be. And so I really have tried, and I think all of us in our own context have tried to say, look, once you are exposed to how amazing it can be to be in a community of women, to see women leading, to see women thriving, to see women supporting each other, you could never want anything else. So I'm hoping we can all keep spreading the love.
So I want to talk about this issue of service. And it's funny, I was joking with some of you on the phone in the last 2 weeks that I haven't actually done a survey, but I don't know how many people who are alums of their schools can quote the school slogan, you know, like that. Because the Wellesley women, you can, and I don't speak Latin, but we all know about, you know, ministering unto others, not to yourself. So I'm wondering about this whole idea of service, and I'll start with you, Ophelia. You know, how clearly you were, when you went to Haiti before you came to Wellesley, clearly this is a theme in your own life, but how did your time at Wellesley reinforce this feeling that, you know, part of your role in the world is going to be to help others who are less fortunate than you?
Yeah. I think that I might have had the inclination before I came to Wellesley. I was interested in other parts of the world. I knew that I couldn't go back to the UK and resume as normal, but I didn't know what I needed in order to do that. So I think that coming to Wellesley so directly after that experience was enormously important in providing me with some of the tools, some of the confidence, which was not a overconfidence, I don't think, at least for me, but it was the ability to question and explore, question limits and boundaries about why conditions were so close to America's shores. There were all kinds of things that happened that made me realize that it was not just of interest to me to serve, but actually personally felt imperative, and that here we're going to provide you in part with some of the tools you'll need to be able to do this. And as I said before, some of those tools I hadn't used until 5 years ago, and that's part of this theme for me.
And Katherine, this has been a big part of your life, is being a volunteer, and in your bio it also says a pilgrim as well. So talk about service and how that's played a role in your life.
Sure. What I think is pretty unique about service at Wellesley is it becomes just embedded in everything you do. So many of my friends and colleagues see service as the separate thing you try to kind of squeeze in around the edges of your life. And I think after 4 years here and then being part of this community on an ongoing basis, the question to all of us is, okay, today, how am I going to serve? You know, whatever it is I'm doing today, how am I going to embed this motto in my day-to-day work? So I have done a lot that is, you know, conventional service, you know, nonprofit work, volunteering work. I have been a pilgrim, which is very hard. But I think what is maybe more important over time is the service that just is how you show up in the world all day, every day, in your non-service capacity, and the cumulative effect of that.
So I have a question I've been dying to ask the panel, and maybe all of you have been asking this question all weekend. What is the Wellesley Effect? Okay? So Satya, you're smiling, so I'll start with you. How do you define that phrase?
Yeah, the Wellesley Effect, it's like being a butterfly, and we've all gotten to experience this amazing community and place, and now everywhere we go, we leave, like a fairy, we leave fairy dust everywhere. You know, every person that I've touched, every person who's worked for me, every person that I've mentored or suggested anything to, I think understands that Wellesley has been the foundation and has been basically, the foundation of what I've done and what I've become. And so I leave that trail everywhere I go and everything I touch.
For
For me, I think the Wellesley Effect is just having that capacity and that community to find your voice. Because I feel like once you found that niche, that one thing that makes you want to move and makes you passionate about, once you find that inner being of yourself, you're able to take it everywhere that you go, and it's not just at Wellesley, it can be anywhere outside, and being able to help others find their voice, I really think is the Wellesley Effect.
Jen?
I think it's words I've already heard, courage, conviction, resiliency, confidence. I think that again, it's not as if there's a class in confidence, but over the course of 4 years, I think once one has gone through Wellesley, you actually have this. Again, it's hard to define, if you will, and hard to define when you knew you had it. But the moment you graduate, you'll know.
Ophelia? Yeah.
I think it's scholarship and fellowship. I think it's a long-term investment. Again, I keep going back to this because it occurs to me all the time. I think this has been a theme with many people here today. This is not something that happened to you and then you leave. This is something that finds its way into you, and it affects every single aspect of your life, your career, your parenting, your relationships, your thoughts and your dreams and your ambitions, and your confidence to be a leader in this world and to be part of something that is huge and ambitious and interesting.
Hard to go last, wow. I think because Wellesley, for all of us, it's a living place, it's a living experience. It has two qualities that are really unusual. One is leverage, this butterfly effect, rippling out into the world. And the other is compounding, better and better and better as time goes by, more and more magnified. And at least in the investment world, if you get those two things in one investment, you're golden, you're all set.
So I have one last question for the panel, and then we'll take questions from the audience. So the last question for the panel is, what do you say to Rocio and her classmates about life after Wellesley, and you have some words of comfort for them? Great. Satya? No?
I would say make as many mistakes and don't be afraid. Fail forward. Keep failing, keep trying new things, because you will fail, but you're a Wellesley woman, and which means you will get up and you will dust yourself off, and you can call me because I've been there. But you just will continue, and you'll, like a phoenix, come out bigger, better, and more magnificent.
All of my classmates are phoenixes. I mean, what can I say? There's nothing I can tell them because they've all had a certain level of success in their lives, and they're it's just an outstanding class. There's more for them to give me than I can give them.
Ophelia, what would you tell the class of 2016?
I would add that they should not accept any limitations that anyone else places on them. That to me feels as though leads to low aspirations, and that limit the ability to be able to feel very ambitious on behalf of yourself and other people is important.
Great. Katherine?
I would just say, come on out, it's fine. And you can always come back when you need to, get a little recharge.
That's great. All right, I want to thank everybody on the panel, and now we'll take questions from the audience. Great. Thank you. All right, they're fair game up here. So there's a mic down here, and there's a mic down here. And we have quite a cross-section, so now you can ask them anything that I didn't get to that you would really like to know the answer to. Great. Yeah, great. Hi, Michelle. Okay. Great.
I can't help this, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Any deep conflicts about Hillary Clinton running for office and the situation she's in?
Okay. So, okay.
And do you want to vote for her because she went to Wellesley, or?
Okay, great. So we do have a journalist in the room, so that is Michelle from CNBC. Anybody want to take on Hillary Clinton? Go ahead.
Look, I have known Hillary for 50 years, and so have my classmates. And she is really one of the finest people that you will ever meet. When I told you that my mother kept me here at Wellesley, I got a positive and a kind of a valuable assist, if you will. My mother got a valuable assist from Hillary. Because Hillary also said to me, well, forget about anybody who's making fun of your Southern accent or, you know, that is looking at you sideways. You have a lot to offer to Wellesley, and you will make something of your life. I mean, look, she was in the same situation I was, 18 years old. Except when Hillary was 18, she spoke and thought in paragraphs. Do you all remember this? So if you said to me, so what are the critical issues going on in the world today? I'd say the war in Vietnam, the civil rights movement. But Hillary would give you, am I correct? Everybody's nodding their head. She would speak about this, but, well, she was a Republican, that's correct. She became a Democrat here at Wellesley. But look, you know, she was apolitical in that sense. That wasn't what defined her. You know, I think she handled herself very well yesterday. I'm on her finance committee. I'm raising money for her all over the country. My son's going to introduce her next Friday in Atlanta. He owns the Atlanta Hawks. But in Atlanta, when she launches her Get Out the Black Vote at Clark Atlanta University. And our entire family is going to work hard to get her elected. Now, by the way, most of my friends are Republicans, and many of them ask me questions about her, and I can only tell them how long I've known her and what a fine individual she's been.
I would agree. I would agree, and I think that, and we shouldn't be afraid to speak out about it, and that I think that Hillary is an extraordinary example of a Wellesley woman, and I think to have the first woman president of the United States coming from this college, it wouldn't surprise me that they came from this college at all, and it would be extraordinary for the country, for women, for this college, and I believe actually for the world.
I just want to add one thing. I don't know how many of my classmates were in Freeman Hall the week that we graduated, but that was where I lived, and that's where there was a sign in the elevator. And this is the week of our graduation, and the sign was predicting what various members of the class would do with their lives. So for Janet, they had, she will marry a football player. This is not much of a prediction. I was dating him at the time. But for Hillary, it said, she will be the first female president of the United States. So it's not going to surprise us when it happens.
Great. Okay.
I'm also a member of the mighty class of '69. And I was remembering when Hillary spoke here one time, I was sitting behind some students, and she said she, as a freshman, she had been a Goldwater girl. And the students in front of me were going, Goldwater girl. And then we say, Goldwater, Goldwater. She changed. What I wanted to ask you about was a little visual gesture that's come my way. I worked with a Wellesley woman at NPR, and there were always Wellesley women coming through our shop. And I decided it was sort of obnoxious to always say, she's a Wellesley woman, she's a Wellesley woman. So she said, let's come up with a little sign, a little symbol that's very private, and we can just tell each other. And she said, I've got just the thing. That's my question.
Great, thank you. Did you have a question? Yeah, go ahead. Right.
Hi, full disclosure, I'm Michelle's Wellesley little sister, so be prepared. Now, my question relates to college affordability. There's been a lot of discussion in terms of how different it was when we, not so younger alums, went to college and were able to have a job or two on campus and pay for school. And this new generation of students who are taking incredible amounts of debt especially women from underrepresented communities and immigrant communities. So I'd love for you guys to talk about this topic in terms of how important it is to make sure that we have a diverse student body and that we make sure that these women are actually also able to take advantage of this effect.
Take that, yeah.
I can help answer that. So before applying to Wellesley, one, I was really scared that I was not going to be able to afford it because I knew I couldn't ask my parents for money. So I break my back senior year just applying for scholarships. And then all of a sudden, the financial aid letter came from Wellesley in the mail, and I couldn't believe it. I had to read it over and over again and like did the calculations. I couldn't believe that I could actually afford to go to Wellesley. And for me, that was a gift for me because it meant like, you know, finally I have the chance to invest in my education. Now that's just my story. Of course, you have to consider different factors, like yes, I did come from an immigrant family, yes, I am low income, so my situation is very unique. Fortunately, I will be graduating from Wellesley without any loans, without any debt. But that's not to say that this is the story for everyone. I do happen to work at financial services, and I do see all the work that Wellesley puts into meeting the needs of every single student. It is scary when you listen to your friends and they say that they have loans that they have in debt with ridiculously amounts, you know, here at Wellesley and outside of school. So I think that we need to continue working with those students on those individual cases to make sure that they can come to Wellesley and they don't have to worry about financial needs, and they can focus more on their studies and not have to worry about how many hours they have to work just to be able to afford Wellesley.
Yeah.
Can I just add to that? I think it was President Clinton who said that talent is equally distributed around the world, but opportunity is not. I know that I speak for the trustees, the administration, and the faculty here, as well as the student body, to say that there is a deep commitment to making sure that this college remains need blind, that there is socioeconomic diversity, and that there are all kinds of really very important, impressive measures in place and being put in place to make sure, including an excellent tool that is called My Intuition, which is a really innovative tool that allows people to work out work out the tuition and the debt that would be incurred, including all kinds of ways to make sure that more and more students can continue to come here, so that money is not a barrier to this kind of great education.
Okay, we have time for one last question. Go ahead. Yep, it's yours.
Thank you. Hi, thank you all for participating today. It's really insightful, and rah-rah, Wellesley, we love it. Question for you, which has been in and out of the history of the college. Do you honestly and truly believe in your heart of hearts that you would be where you are today, sharing with us all these magnificent stories of success and warmth, if Wellesley were co-ed?
Okay, why?
No. To be in an environment where every voice I heard all day long was a woman, every leader on campus was a woman, more than half of my professors were women, there's absolutely no substitute for the way that rearranged my own head, so that when I went into an environment that was 10% women and no women voices, it didn't even occur to me not to speak up. That never would have been the case at a co-ed place for me.
I don't believe that I would have taken the risks that I took in front of other people and was prepared to plunge headfirst if I had not been surrounded entirely by women classmates. And obviously there's diversity in the faculty, which was excellent, but I think it was this environment that actually fostered that important, necessary ability to take risks and not worry for a certain amount of time. And this is not obviously true when you go out in the world, but that, for me, even though I was an older student, was still extremely important.
I've already commented, I mean, I'm a little bit of the odd lady out here. And again, it's a tug of war for me because I'm an extremely affirmative person. And the single-sex nature of the school today is an anachronism to some extent. Now again, I'm not in any way complaining and I'm not trying to start anything, if you will. I did benefit, there's no question, from everything that I learned and every part of the environment here. I live pretty much in a male world and I'm not intimidated by it at all. And so it's not, I can't answer the question. I mean, I'm so far away from having been a student, I'm probably not the best person to speak.
Rocio?
Yeah. So, I mean, one, it'll be really interesting for me to see how next summer, you know, how things change once after leaving Wellesley, but two things. One, I studied abroad my junior year, and I went back to that whole co-ed university level, education level, and I saw right away what Wellesley was telling me all these years is that, you know, I found myself, you know, sitting in front of the classrooms and like raising my hand and, you know, speaking up where my other female classmates were in the back and did not say that many things, and that shocked me because here at Wellesley, it's like you're encouraged to talk, and even if you're shy about it like I am sometimes, you're still encouraged to want to speak up and say something. So for me, that was a shocker. I was like, oh, they were right. This is what they were talking about. And then second thing, I spent this summer part of the Wellesley in Washington program, and oh my gosh. I mean, it did shock me because finally I saw like how different institutions work in the DC area and how there might not be always like a safe space for you there as a woman. But nonetheless, it could be challenging, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible for me or somebody else, you know, to speak up and have our voices heard there.
Wellesley's mascot, you get the last word.
Yes. Okay. Right. Yeah, I was definitely, I'd gone to a Jewish day school the first 2 years of high school, went to a public school, and I was the girl in the back. I was afraid to raise my hand, and when I came to Wellesley, I was surprised at how I would leap at answering questions, and I was so excited to actually have spotlight on me. And that was something that I'd never experienced before, and I was excited for my sisters who had raised their hands as well. It was like the supportive thing, and I think that it's been incredibly crucial to who I am and what I do now. Definitely leadership and saying things and not being afraid to stand up for what I believe in was definitely cultivated here at Wellesley.
All right, thank you so much, panel. You guys have been terrific. Yes, thank you. Thank you all. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you.